Pardon the interruption, but I'm Mike Wilbon. Tony likes his first day off so much, he's taking another.
Good thing the camera loves Phil and Frank. What can I tell you?
Man, that's some confidence there.
Well, the camera loves me, but the fans love you, the company loves you, so ultimately it works out for you in the end.
I'm glad you make those acknowledgments, Frank. Thank you. That's so kind of you. Welcome to PTI. In today's episode, Patrick Mahomes, Patrick, not Pat,
that's right,
lights it up. The Clippers want a new coach, and the Lightning take the Stanley Cup. We begin with the Tennessee Titans halting in-person activities due to multiple positive test results for COVID-19. The Titans already had 2 players miss Sunday's game against the Vikings because they were in the protocol. This morning, they reported 3 new player positives and 5 positives among staff members. The Vikings also suspended in-person activities as a precaution. Frank, your thoughts on what this could mean for both teams and the league in general?
Yeah, the Titans are 3-0. Kind of this is their first loss of the season in some ways, because even if they play that game on Sunday or maybe even Monday, as reports are out there that as of right now, the game is still on. But here's the thing, Mike. We expected this. This has happened in every sport. It even happened in the NBA before players got down to the bubble. They were testing positive. Baseball, it happened. We did the show where we were concerned could they even get the season started. The only difference is in college football is in the same predicament. This is a contact sport. So when you have guys playing, it can pass a lot easier in a contact sport. But I think the NFL is going to just forge ahead like every other sport has done thus far.
Yeah, look, it hasn't gotten to the place of baseball. I mean, we were wondering, Frank, as you alluded to, whether baseball was going to be able to get this done. In the first couple of weeks, they lost a pretty large percentage of games to people testing positive for the virus, both players and staff. The NFL, I think, has done a miraculous job so far to get through to this point, having so few positive tests without a bubble. Now, those in-person, those facilities we talked about operate as sort of a bubble for about 12 to 14 hours a day. It's just the way football operates. But when you look at, one team and having that many, we're not talking about a test or 2. When you talk about 3 new members and 5 total, and these numbers, Frank, it gets a little scary, and there's not a lot. Look, the NFL has essentially said, we may have teams miss games, and we just keep forging on, like you said, but I think that's easier said than done, don't you?
Yeah, so Notre Dame has already had a game that they had to postpone. And here's the thing. When you postpone baseball games, they were playing doubleheaders, 7-inning games. Yeah. You can't do that in football. You're not going to play 2 games in a week. Here would be my question to you, though. How unfair would it be for the Titans if they do have to play either Sunday or Monday and they don't even get back into their facility until Saturday? Where's their prep for a game, for a major game against the Steelers?
Yeah, no practice. I mean, we're already questioning whether the spate of injuries we've seen in these first few weeks of the season have anything to do with no preseason games and a more uncertain camp. Certainly not the rigidity of camps that we're used to seeing pro football players conduct themselves in. And now if you don't have practice for several days during the week, are you prepared? And what does that mean for health and safety on a Sunday or Monday night?
Yeah.
I mean, we got questions and we don't have any answers. And by the way, people who say they have answers, I ain't trusting them. I don't know about you.
No. But I do find it interesting that on the day that the baseball playoffs start, this is the first outbreak that we've seen in the NFL, because it was the same issue they had with baseball where we were worried, can they even get a season completed? And now here they are in the playoffs. All right, let's move on to a game that did take place last night, and it was a tough one for the Ravens. Patrick, don't call me Pat Mahomes, threw for 385 yards and 4 touchdowns and leading the Chiefs to a 34-20 win in Baltimore. By contrast, Lamar Jackson, he struggled, throwing for a career-worst 97 yards. Wow. Jackson is now 0-3 against the Chiefs and called them our kryptonite. Mike, what did this game tell you about Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson?
Well, there was some separation now. I mean, a lot of people went into last night's game thinking, okay, this game's in Baltimore. I know there are no fans, but there's a feel when you're on your home field that you should feel you can defend, and the Ravens couldn't do that. And now what looked like a couple of even teams that we didn't get to see play each other in last year's playoffs because Tennessee interrupted that meeting, now we've got this. We've got some separation. And Patrick Mahomes looks like he's at the top of the heap, and everybody else is just flies down here. So in terms of Lamar Jackson, hey, that passing attack is going to have to evolve, Frank, to become more sophisticated, particularly against blitzes. I mean, look, Mahomes eats blitzes for lunch. Jackson has trouble with them. Baltimore's offense has trouble with them. They can't afford in this day and age to be a defense-first team to such a degree like they were with Ray Lewis and those teams back in the early aughts. They can't do that anymore. It's not going to work.
No, yesterday we talked about Aaron Rodgers and also Russell Wilson, how the game just comes easy for them. They're at such a level. It's amazing that this early in his career, Mahomes is already there. That's the remarkable thing. And Lamar Jackson has been a league MVP. I get that. But Mahomes has won a Super Bowl MVP. And if not for an offside call against the Patriots, he might have already won 2 Super Bowls. But Lamar Jackson, here's my thing about him, and he's a terrific player. He's a dynamic player. Everyone is trying to make a Brady-Manning comparison here. It doesn't exist. Lamar Jackson has played 2 playoff games, Michael, both at home, and he's lost. In games where his team has trailed at halftime, he's 0-5. I get it. He's 21-1 in the regular season against every team not named the Kansas City Chiefs. But to get to that level that Mahomes is at, he's got a long way to go.
And you know what? They may have to figure out and accept. He can be effective, but he is different. We are not going to turn him into Mahomes. Nope. They're going to have to figure out as a team and a team offense. And this is a great staff. They clearly know what they're doing. They're going to have to embrace something else to make up for whatever it is that he lacks in those 3 losses against the Kansas City Chiefs. But wow, man, the Chiefs, Frank, they are meeting every bit of preseason hype. They really are.
Well, let me ask you this. All right, so if he stays healthy, how great can he be?
Yeah.
He keeps the defense completely off balance. He can throw the ball down the field, short passes. And then when he has to scramble, he always scrambles to get just the right amount of yardage. He doesn't take
find
big
the
hits.
right open receiver, still open. He has patience, got the whole thing.
Yep.
Meeting the hype. That doesn't happen often.
Yep.
The Los Angeles Clippers, who had some trouble with the hype, will try again with a new head coach. The team fired Doc Rivers yesterday, 2 weeks after blowing a 3-1 series lead against the Nuggets. Rivers was the coach for 5 of the Clippers' best all-time regular seasons, but was 3-8 in playoff series and clinching games anyway. Frank, should the Clippers expect better with a different coach? And where do you think Doc goes from here?
Well, first of all, and I'll let you answer to Doc because you know him really well where it could go. I think he's going to end up in TV for at least a year. But the results have to get better for the Clippers, but I'm not necessarily putting that on a coach. I'm not going to put it on Doc. I'm going to put it on Kawhi Leonard because Kawhi Leonard is the one that wanted to go to L.A. He made the front office move heaven and earth to bring Paul George in, who turned out to be a dud in the bubble. This is as much on Kawhi Leonard. And don't you find it interesting, Mike? 2 teams that believe that they struck it rich in the summer of 2019, the Nets and the Clippers, when it came to free agents. Guess what? Both of those teams got rid of their head coach already.
Yeah, this is difficult for me. Going back, I've said this on the show and other places a million times. I've known Doc Rivers most of my life, in his life, growing up in Chicago and knowing of him even before I knew him. And so yesterday was particularly troublesome and annoying for me because it dumps this whole thing at the feet of Doc Rivers. And Doc was the first one to say the night they lost that series, blame it on me. But there's some blame to spread around. And certainly your stars, more in basketball than any other sport, Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, have to take some. And by the way, some of the other players on that team who were loud and wanted to pat themselves in the back and they're always in your face, Marcus Morris and Patrick Beverly, and to some extent,
Montrezl
Harrell, who, by the way, is going to make a boatload of money because he's a free agent and go wherever he wants. Fine. But those personalities did not mesh with the personalities of Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. It just didn't. And so there are chemistry issues. Who takes the blame for that? I don't know who takes the blame. I have not talked to Doc Rivers about this stuff in detail yet, so I can answer honestly. I don't know. But television, Doc's done television.
Yep.
I'm putting a plug in when I talked to him for this network, which he worked for before he was coach of the Clippers. He could do that and stay in Southern California and do the things that he's accustomed to doing without stress for a year or two. But New Orleans has already contacted him, as we know. We think Philly has. Of course they would reach out and try to get him to coach those teams. They need him, but he doesn't need them or that right now, Frank. I'm just hoping that he maybe take some time away. He take some time off.
when I hear you say Doc for TV, it better not be Phil and Doc, or else you and I are going to have a big issue. But by the way, Ty Lue, Jeff Van Gundy, it sounds like they're the favorites.
It sounds like they're the front runners about that. Doc is one of my favorite people in the world. He's a White Sox guy, and it just doesn't mesh with the Cubs guy. But that's another story for another time.
Well, of course, the NBA Finals, that starts tomorrow night. Meanwhile, the Tampa Bay Lightning, they're your Stanley Cup champions. There it is. We got it done. They beat the Dallas Stars 2-0 on Monday night to win in 6. This is the result that so many expected last year when the Lightning dominated the regular season, only to get swept out of the first round of the playoffs. Coach John Cooper says his team was strengthened by years of heartbreak. Mike, your thoughts on what the Lightning and the league achieved this postseason?
Well, just the Lightning. It's first. It's just a charming story. How about Cooper talking, and players did too, but Cooper talked extensively about how his team identified with the Virginia Cavaliers basketball team that, of course, was the first and still, I guess, only right now to be a 1 seed to lose to a 16. Last year, of course, Tampa was a 1 losing to an 8. Yeah. And they just took this heartache and they turned it into something. And they had Cavaliers like hats and T-shirts and stuff. That was pretty cool. I identified them more like the San Antonio Spurs. They had to walk around after losing to the Miami Heat for a whole year, and they got back after it and got revenge. They did. But the league, the NBA is not the only one conducting a successful bubble. The NHL had 2 of them and then combined them into one for the end of the postseason. And hats off and cheers to the NHL for doing the same thing.
Yeah, and Gary Bettman, who, by the way, when he went on the ice last night, he didn't get booed. There were no fans in Edmonton, so nobody booed him. Right. But he deserves cheers, though. They had 31,000 tests. Every single one of them came back negative. So bravo to the NHL and especially the Lightning. And you mentioned Cooper. He did a great interview with Scott Van Pelt, and he said, listen, he doesn't really know UVA basketball. He doesn't know Tony Bennett, but he identified with what they went through. And remember, it wasn't just a year for them. It was over 400 days.
That's right.
Because the season extended so long. But that was the best team. Here's a team that not only got knocked out of the first round, Mike, they lost to an 8 seed and got swept. You don't ever see, we do see an 8 seed lose, but you don't ever get swept. That is disappointment. But they were the best team last year, clearly the best team this year. Their power play was outstanding. By the way, I know you like hockey stats. They were 12-3 in the postseason in 1-goal games. There you go.
That's pretty big. By the way, I got to admit, I was rooting for Game 7. I thought that would have been a hell of a way to finish off this particular double bubble condensed postseason for the NHL. But you can't go against what Tampa Bay did last night.
Yep.
Let's take a break. But when we come back, which player is more valuable to his team, LeBron James or Jimmy Butler?
And Garrett Cole pitches against Shane Bieber in their playoff opener tonight. Who would you rather have on the mound? Toss-up is next. By the way, I'm giving Tom Brady credit for that win. He's in Tampa. They already got a title there.
That's right. Are the Lightning just the Tampa Lightning, or are they still Tampa Bay?
I think they're Tampa Bay.
Somebody dropped a Bay, though. Time for Toss-Up, Frank Isola. And since Tony's off, pushes will be allowed.
All right.
What's first?
Toss-up. Who would you rather have on the mound tonight? Garrett Cole or Shane Bieber?
You know what, Frank? I know that Cole has been so dominant, right? The last year and now 2 seasons. You think, oh, can I pick against him? Yeah, you can. Because Shane Bieber of Cleveland has a 1.63 ERA, which led baseball, 8 wins, which led, 122 strikeouts, which led. And I know Cole is terrific, but he did allow 14 home runs. He's lucky this game is not a Yankee Stadium where balls just fly out like, Nerf balls out of a backyard. But I'm going with Bieber, as great as Cole was last year, and as terrific as he's been this year. Bieber's just been better now.
Michael Wilbon, you're telling me you're a Belieber, I think they call them.
Yes,
That's what
I am.
Kids
I'm
call
a Belieber.
Garrett Cole, as you know, Michael, when a free agent pitcher comes into New York, the expectations, especially when you pitch for the Yankees, are sky high. And this year on the road, he's 3-2. I'm talking about Garrett Cole with a 3.67 ERA. Not good enough. And like you said, he's pitching on the road tonight. And there's been a lot of talk. The last great Yankee free agent pitcher that won them a World Series, CC Sabathia, in 2009, 4-1 with an ERA just under 2 runs. That's what they need out of Garrett Cole. He's paid
Pressure
like an ace.
Cole, indeed.
Perform like it.
Expectations. What is next?
Last one, toss-up. More valuable to his team, LeBron James or Jimmy Butler?
Frank.
Be careful. Be careful.
I think by the narrowest of margins. And again, this is taught like even more extreme than the Garrett Cole, example. LeBron James is the most valuable player to his team. Probably, if the only other person you could talk about was Kobe in his prime, the last person who would have that thing said about him. But it's narrow, man. I mean, I'm going to go with LeBron, but again, Jimmy Butler, and this is one of my favorite stats in the NBA, career, playoff and regular seasons, Jimmy Butler versus LeBron James, 17 and 17. This is not a coincidence because Jimmy Butler is not always, but he is often left with the task of dealing with head-to-head guarding LeBron James. He knew this when he was drafted in Chicago as a kid who was not a star, not an all-star, not expected to be this kind of player. It's LeBron, but not by much.
Hey, Jimmy Butler has done a terrific job. He brought the Philadelphia team, which doesn't get along together last year. They made it to a Game 7 of the second round, and if not for Kawhi's shot, that would have been in overtime. So he's been terrific. He's changed the perception about him. But as you know, if they announce that for Game 1, Jimmy Butler's not available and LeBron James isn't available, that's advantage Miami Heat right there all the way. Remember, too, LeBron, 254 playoff games. It's amazing.
It's the guy more than 3 years of playoffs, and he doesn't seem to have any wear and tear.
Crazy.
But he has wear and tear. I mean, the durability, it's insane. It's insane.
Really
Yet, I think you agree with me. The advantage that LeBron, that question poses is not as dramatic as it would seem, is it?
Yeah. No, I don't think so. But you'd still rather have LeBron sit out.
Anybody in the league. You would still
the
right
best.
now.
Yeah.
That's it. Let's take one last break, but still to come. Novak Djokovic is back on the court at his first Grand Slam since getting tossed from the U.S. Open.
And Notre Dame coach Brian Kelly believes he knows the source of his team's coronavirus outbreak.
Do we need to know that? I mean, somebody tracing it needs to know that, but do we need to know that?
It's a tease. It's a good story.
Yeah.
It's Notre Dame.
It's time to get happy, people. Happy 32nd birthday, Kevin Durant. The NBA playoffs, wherever they're contested, are more compelling with the two-time NBA champion, 2 times Finals MVP, and 4-time scoring champ. The question now confronting KD is whether, after rupturing his right Achilles in Game 5 of last year's Finals, he can get back to that same top 5 level of play as a member of the Brooklyn Nets, with a new coach, Steve Nash, and a new co-star, one of Frank's faves, Kyrie Irving.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of pressure on all 3 of them. If he plays in January, Michael, which we think that's when the NBA is going to come back, 19 months since he last got hurt, and since he last played.
Probably going to help have that extra time off. By the way, I'm thinking more like February or March for the beginning of that NBA season. Happy anniversary, Willie Mays. On this day 66 years ago, with 2 men on, nobody out, in an 8th inning tie with Cleveland in Game 1 of the 1954 World Series, Indians hitter Vic Wertz blasted a ball to deep center field about 420 feet away, which would be a home run in any and every one of today's ball yards. But Mays ran it down at the warning track, made an over-the-shoulder catch, spun, and fired the ball back to the infield, second base, I believe, to keep the runners from advancing. The Giants went on to win that game and sweep the series. While it's possibly the greatest play in World Series history, Mays says it's not even his best defensive play. Frank, the older I get, the more I'm convinced Mays, even ahead of Ruth, Gehrig, DiMaggio, Williams, and Aaron, is baseball's GOAT. Defensively, he was clearly superior to all the others, even Hank.
Yeah, well, you're not going to get an argument from me about Willie Mays, especially growing up in New York, hearing my father talk about him, older relatives. But one thing about the catch, which is an iconic moment, can I just say this? I've seen Jim Edmonds make that catch. I was at a game when Andy Van Slyke made that catch. Mike, that catch has been made before. It's a great moment. Jim Edmonds would make that catch once every 3 games.
There's only one guy who is as good defensively, maybe, as Willie Mays. Ken Griffey Jr.
Jim Edmonds was pretty good.
He wasn't junior.
He used to play a shallow center.
For another day. Happy trails to Mikael Ymer. Novak Djokovic sent the Swede out of the French Open in the first round, 0-2-3. It was Joker's first major match since he was DQ'd from the U.S. Open for drilling that linesperson in the neck with a ball. Joker said, quote, "It's something that stayed in my mind and will stay there a long time. I will make sure not to make the same mistake twice," close quote. We hope not. That DQ was Djokovic's only loss of the season. Frank, he's 32-1 this year, and the top seed at the French, one spot somehow above 12-time champ Rafael Nadal.
Yeah, Djokovic blew it at the U.S. Open. He should have won that tournament. How about the weather in France, Mike? I know you travel the world. You were hanging out with Magic Johnson last year in the south of France. The weather wasn't like this. All the players are complaining about how cold it is.
How cold it is already?
Yep.
Hey, that's why they got sweats, and you all got contracts and a
Tell
load
that to
of
Azarenka.
stuff. Put on
She was
some clothes.
complaining.
We're running out of show. Let's go to the big finish. Notre Dame coach Brian Kelly says his team's outbreak was triggered by an asymptomatic person at the pregame meal. Your thoughts?
Well, they said it was one of the only team meals they've had together. Plus, they don't play this weekend. Not that big of a deal. The Houston Chronicle is reporting that the Texans will not be signing Earl Thomas. Your thoughts?
Several teams have decided to not sign Earl Thomas, as great as he once was. The Broncos will start Brett Rippon at quarterback Thursday against the Jets. What a dreadful game that is. But tell us about Rippon.
Well, I thought you were going to give the scouting report, but I'll give it. 9th quarterback to start for Denver since the 2017 season. Undrafted out of one of your places, Boise
Nephew
State.
of Mark Rippon, too.
There you go. Game 1 of the Marlins and Cubs tomorrow, 2 o'clock. Who you got?
We can't hit. Somebody's got to pitch a shutout for the Cubbies to win. Kyle Hendricks can do that. All right, last one. Noon game tomorrow. Do you like Trevor Bauer to beat the Bravos in Game 1, Frank?
I do like Trevor Bauer to get it done. By the way, the Braves have lost 9 consecutive playoff series, plus a wild card game. When they get to this time of year, they tend to lose. Haven't won since 2001, playoff series. Crazy. We're out of time. Thanks for watching. I'm Frank Isola.
And I'm Mike Wilbon. We are bumped by baseball. The playoffs tomorrow, knuckleheads. You can get the PTI podcast on the ESPN app or Apple Podcasts.
Donnie Baseball versus the Cubs. Watch out.